Jurassic Park Spinosaurus. Love it or hate it, this theropod made an unforgettable impression in Jurassic Park 3. While its cinematic design was groundbreaking for its time, how might this fictional Spinosaur fare in the harsh competitive ecosystem of Late Cretaceous North Africa? This Spinosaurus, referred to as ASIER 87 in the show, and known by some fans as Snock, has the capability to be the most devastating force to walk this part of the continent. But could it really hold its own against the unique challenges of this prehistoric ecosystem? But before we jump into it, I would really appreciate if you all could like and subscribe so I don't end up extinct like the dinosaurs in this video. But alright, let us begin, kicking it off with ASIER 87's physical traits and behaviour. If we're just going to use JP3, then we might not have too much to go off of. But luckily for us, the same Spinosaurus featured in Camp Cretaceous, standing at approximately 5.4 meters or 18 feet at the head, 6.7 meters 22 feet at the sail, and a length of 15.24 meters or 50 feet, it overshadows most of North Africa's predators. Now when it comes to its weight, let's just say it's got something similar to most of the Jurassic franchise, and that being it is inconsistent. A variety of sources might give 4 tons, 6 tons, 8 tons, 10 tons, and even 20 tons. But for the sake of this video, I think that a more accurate weight would be around the 10-ton range. 4 tons is just way too light, and 20 tons is way too heavy. Its iconic sail isn't just used for show either, rather being theorized to play a role in thermoregulation. Although it did pack quite a bit of weight on its body, it was also quick on its feet. While we don't know how quick it would have been able to maneuver through aquatic systems, we know according to animation supervisor Dan Taylor that this Spinosaurus could travel at around 43 kilometers an hour or 27 miles per hour. Although one could argue that the Spinosaurus could technically move faster, as it was also stated that they designed it specifically to be better built for running than even the T-Rexes. ASIER 87's combination of powerful arms and jaws set it apart from most of its contemporaries, bar from the Indominus Rex. Its arms equipped with large hooked claws are capable of delivering devastating and significant damage. I mean, it was more than capable of tearing up and maneuvering a small plane. Its jaws, while technically specialized for gripping fish, clearly had more than enough strength to deliver critical damage to similarly sized theropods. I would say at the very least it would be around 20,000 newtons, as it wouldn't be at the same level as Rexy, which was 34,000 newtons, so I think that 20,000 newtons is a fair estimate. And for those that want to point that it broke the T-Rex's neck, I would like to bring up Exhibit A and B. Exhibit A being that when the Spinosaurus broke the T-Rex's neck in Jurassic Park 3, it was clearly seen utilizing its arms for a grip and turn method. Meanwhile, in Camp Cretaceous, the Spino had Big Edie in its mouth for a considerably longer time and was unable to break its neck. This further supports the idea that the Spinosaurus's true strength comes from its arms rather than its jaws. Also, we can't forget that this asset's durability was a standout feature. Within the franchise, it was shown to tank a lot of attacks that should have been more than enough to put it down for good. It withstood getting hit by plane propellers on its sail, which bear in mind should be the weakest point for the dinosaur. However, Jurassic Park says no, and it's been shown multiple times to be flipped and thrown onto its back and roll over completely fine. It has also taken high caliber bullets from the mercenaries and has even survived bites from tyrannosaurs throughout its appearances. ASIER 87 demonstrates both aggression and an adaptability in its natural habitat. Its territorial nature is evident in its willingness to confront other large predators such as Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was highlighted when Eric stated that T-Rex urine was utilized to scare off smaller predators like raptors, however it would bring in the Spinosaurus. In aquatic environments, it's shown to be able to swim quite effectively. Its streamlined body and sensory adaptations allow it to dominate river systems and more likely than not prey on large aquatic creatures or terrestrial creatures that get too close. And while it can be highly confrontational and aggressive, its behavior is also pragmatic. In situations where the odds are overwhelmingly against it, the Spinosaurus will choose to retreat, such as when Little Edie and Big Edie confronted it. It understood it was outmatched and decided to back off. I say all this and more as there is no wonder that so many people argue this theropod to be a top dog, or well, top theropod in the Jurassic Park franchise. But now let us get into the set environment that our dinosaur is going to be placed in. The environments that our Spinosaurus will be placed in today includes the Kemkem region of Morocco and the Bahariya Formation in Egypt. Now technically these areas are quite a trek apart, but for the sake of the video we will be doing more of a composite ecosystem. And to be fair, these regions share quite a lot of common fauna, so this isn't as big of a reach as one might think. The landscape was shaped by an interplay of powerful rivers, expansive floodplains, and advancing seas. Here the environment was dynamic, with rivers coursing through ancient bedrock, carving channels and depositing sediments. This would create fertile floodplains with seasonal rains transforming the arid land. To the north, the land transitions into a coastal expanse, where shallow seas periodically advance, yet it wasn't a cohesive landscape. To the south, the terrain became more arid, marked by sandy plains suggesting a drier climate. So, how would the Jurassic Park franchise hold up? And I'm going to be honest, I think it would be more than comfortable. We know this as we saw in Jurassic Park 3, the Spino was more than at home in a more tropical environment, inhabiting the forests and rivers of the island. However, we also saw in Camp Cretaceous that was able to survive in a region that was an arid desert. Although we may not know how long this was for, it was seemingly effectively able to navigate the land and did not seem too bothered. To me, this reflects that the Spinosaurus would be adaptable and would be able to transition into this environment quite comfortably, thus providing it an environmental score of 9 out of 10. So we have established its environment, but what are the potential prey options that exist in this area? Well, we have two segments here, the first being marine life and the second being terrestrial life. The waterways were alive with diverse aquatic prey, providing ASIER 87 with ample opportunities to leverage its semi-aquatic adaptations. Among its prime targets would include the massive Mousini, a fish that could grow up to 5 meters or 16 feet in length and weigh over a ton. Slow moving and heavily armored, these fish likely relied on deep waters for protection, but unfortunately for them, ASIER 87's powerful jaws and ability to swim more than effectively would make short work of these defenses. Another potential target would be Onchoprichtus, a sawfish-like ray with a length of around 4 meters or 14 feet, and a weight of 150 kilograms or 330 pounds. Its distinctive serrated snout could make it a dangerous prey item for many animals. However, this Spinosaur's bulk and pure ability to take damage would allow it to easily overpower fish like this. Also, smaller fish species and aquatic reptiles would have called these rivers home. These prey items, while less substantial than a full-grown Mousini or Onchoprichtus, would have helped this Spino sustain itself during periods of scarcity or between large hunts. Its sensory adaptations, likely similar to modern-day crocodiles, would likely allow it to detect subtle vibrations in the water, giving it a predatory edge. When it comes to land, ASIER 87 would face an entirely different array of prey. The floodplains and riverbanks were home to a number of massive herbivores, each presenting unique challenges and rewards. Notable targets would be the sauropods which inhabited the area. But just before we get into those giants, there have also been a number of unidentified ornithopods and ankylosaurids in the region. Due to not knowing their size, we can't exactly say if these would be worthwhile prey options, but I'm pretty confident that ASIER 87 could hunt both of these with ease. Now getting into the bigger prey, a potential prey item would have included Egyptosaurus. This herbivore reached around 15 meters or 49 feet in length and 7 tons in weight. There was also Rebucosaurus, a mid to large sized sauropod that has had quite a bit of debate on its size. It was originally put at 10 tons in weight, however current estimates have placed it at around 26 meters or 80 feet long and weights of 40 tons. We also can't forget about one of the largest sauropods of North Africa, this being Parallelotidon. This absolute unit could have weighed in on an average of 55 tons. Last but not least, we have the mysterious giant only known by footprints. This is known as Breviparopus, a sauropod estimated to have weighed in at around 62 tons. Clearly the largest of the dinosaurs in this video. These sauropods would have provided an interesting challenge for ASIER 87, with the latter of the bunch likely being too large for it to hunt easily. Instead it would target young or elderly individuals, as well as likely taking them on while close to water, giving it an environmental advantage. The blend of marine and terrestrial prey options highlights the versatility and adaptability of ASIER 87. Whether stalking giants on land or ambushing aquatic prey in the rivers, ASIER 87 has a wide array of food sources to exploit, making it a dominant force in the ecosystem. However, as many of the prey options are multiple times heavier than itself, this does knock it down a couple pegs, giving it a hunting score of 8.5 out of 10. Now we look into the native apex predators that called this prehistoric landscape home, and unlike North America where only T-Rex ruled, there were a number of large predators. Among these predators was Carcharodontosaurus, a massive theropod that could reach lengths of 13 meters or 43 feet and weigh over 6 tons, with heavier estimates even placing it at around 8.2 tons. Its anterior bite force was approximately 11,300 newtons and posterior bite force being around 25,450 newtons. With the name meaning the shark-toothed reptile, there should be no surprise that its teeth were highly serrated, perfect for cutting through flesh. This predator was more likely a top carnivore in the terrestrial domain and could cause the Spinosaurus quite a few issues. This would especially be the case if they hunted in groups, which although is not confirmed, could have been likely as much of the prey options in this area would have been sauropods. But Carcharodontosaurus did not dominate alone. The rivers and floodplains of North Africa were home to the real Spinosaurus, one of the largest theropods to ever walk the earth, or perhaps swim. The debate on his swimming capabilities will never end. Anyways, with an estimated length of 15 meters or 49 feet and a higher end weight between 7 to 8 tons, this fish eater could exert an interior bite force of around 4,800 newtons and a posterior bite force of 12,000 newtons. Clearly, it was not built for hunting massive prey such as the sauropods, but to be fair, Jurassic Park used the information that they had, which pointed to Spinosaurus being a super predator. Anyways, the real deal was more than likely semi-aquatic. Whether you want to believe that he hunted prey in a stork-like sense or more like a crocodile where it would swim is up to interpretation, and every year a new paper comes out arguing something else. Adding to this pantheon of predators, we have the underrated Bariharosaurus, and a somewhat mysterious theropod. Known from the Bahariya Formation of Egypt, its fossils were tragically lost during World War II, including its holotype. Despite this, there is still estimations of its size. It is assumed to have reached lengths between 11 to 12 meters or 36 to 40 feet and weighed in between 3 to 7 tons. Not to be overlooked were the smaller and faster predators like Deltrodromaeus, which could reach 8 meters or 26 feet in length and a weight of a ton. There was also Rugops, which measured between 4.4 to 5.3 meters or 14 to 17 feet in length and a weight of 410 kilograms or 900 pounds. These predators would have filled the niche of hunting down smaller prey options, avoiding direct competition with the larger theropods. Our last peculiar giant, known as Stomatosuchus, shared these waterways. This crocodiliform was fairly large even for prehistoric standards. The predator was estimated to grow up to 10 meters or 33 feet long. Its jaw structure was unlike anything seen in modern crocodiles, being flattened and wide, potentially housing a pouch similar to that of pelicans. While much of its feeding behavior remains speculative, Stomatosuchus may have specialized in filter feeding, sifting small fish and aquatic organisms from the water. This could cause a few issues if it went after the same prey options as our semi-aquatic Spinosaur. In this ecosystem, the interactions between these predators would have shaped a unique and competitive landscape. This would be an interesting situation for ASIER 87, as he would be faced with a number of predators that he had not yet faced on Isla Sorna. However, given it's still substantially larger than many of these predators, it would provide a competition score of 8 out of 10. Its biggest issue would be Carcharodontosaurus. But now that we've finished everything, we can finally go through the scenario of could Spinosaurus survive late Cretaceous North Africa. So, transporting the Jurassic Park Spinosaurus into the ecosystem of Late Cretaceous Africa is akin to unleashing a potential living extinction event. Its formidable size, semi-aquatic nature, and sheer adaptability seems to have posed ASIER 87 to dominate. But will it truly rule supreme in an environment brimming with apex predators, massive herbivores, and specialized prey? Well, lucky for us in this hypothetical scenario, a rift between realities opened and JP Spinosaurus now walks through into Africa. The humid air of the North African region clings heavy as the JP Spino emerges into a world both alien yet instinctually familiar. Its massive bulk would cut through any and all foliage with ease, and it would likely approach a river teeming with life. Aquatic prey like Mersonai and Onchopristis would dart below the water's surface, while herds of Parallelotidon would lumber across the floodplains. This new environment offers an abundance of resources, but it also presents novel threats. ASIER 87's first initiative would likely be to carve out a territory for itself, something that we know it would do, as unlike the Indominus Rex, which went on an absolute rampage through Isla Nublar, Isla Sorna did not have the same issue with the Spino. Instead, it remained mostly in its territory, taking out competitors that would wander in its domain. Given its immense size and skill, it would likely immediately claim rivers and adjacent floodplains. I think that local Stomatosuchus populations would likely move territories or be hunted into oblivion. It is in the unfortunate position of being too large to be ignored, but lacks enough size, weaponry, or defense to effectively protect itself. They would get carved out and turned into a nice meal. Smaller predators like Deltrodromaeus or Rugops would arguably be small enough to be able to avoid this new giant, allowing them to remain in its territory. This is supported by the fact that in Jurassic Park 3, we saw Ceratosaurus as well as Velociraptors inhabiting the same region, likely meaning that ASIER 87 didn't perceive them to be a threat to himself. On the other hand, Carcharodontosaurus, the native Spinosaurus, and Bahariasaurus were unlikely to yield so easily. I imagine the first confrontation confrontation would arise when ASIER 87 meets with a Carcharodontosaurus that would overlap in its hunting grounds. The clash would be intense but brief. It is important to note that despite the Spinosaurus being highly durable, it was shown to still take damage from the smallest T-Rex in the franchise, but the franchise's T-Rexes are known not to have effectively shapen teeth meant for biting. I think that the Carcharodontosaurus could deliver some serious slicing damage. Slicing damage which the Spinosaurus is vulnerable to. Although the Spinosaurus being a solid 2 tons heavier than even the largest Carcharodontosaurus would mean that it would succeed in taking down its opposition. The encounter would not be without cost, as ASIER 87 would sustain some superficial wounds from the Carcharodontosaurus, but it would only take a bit of time to recover. ASIER 87 would quickly adapt to the region's mixed diet of aquatic and terrestrial prey. Its semi-aquatic prowess would allow it to dominate these waterways, ambushing the large fish and reptiles which would inhabit it. Occasionally, it would venture on the land to stalk sauropods like Rubacosaurus or Egyptosaurus. Juveniles or weakened adults would become targets, as although the Spinosaurus was technically equipped to take down sauropods, it would still not put itself in an unneeded amount of danger. Yet, hunting terrestrial prey wouldn't be without challenges. Although the Spinosaurus is stronger than practically every theropod, that does not mean that hunting the biggest of game would work out in its favour. Hunting adult Parallelotitans or Breviparopuses would be simply too much of a challenge to be worth this risk. And that's taking into consideration that there was an individual one of these alone by themselves, no herd at all. If they did move in herds, then the Spino would have little chance of being successful. From its experiences so far, it would learn to target isolated or vulnerable individuals, avoiding direct confrontation with larger herbivores unless absolutely necessary. The ecosystem's native Spinosaurus presents the most competition in relation to marine diet. Although ASIER 87 is legitimately just a more dangerous, potent, and extreme version of the native species, we don't necessarily know how it would deal with being with other Spinosaurs. However, if a conflict would occur, here is how I think it would go. The counter would be a tense standoff with both predators sizing each other up on the riverbank, with ASIER 87 having a clear size advantage. From here it would go of one of two ways. Either the native Spinosaurus would leave, or ASIER 87 would rush at it, knock it to the ground, and that in itself would likely cause critical injuries. If that did not keep the native Spinosaurus down for good, then it would finish it off with its classic neck break. I know that was a bit short and you might have expected a longer battle, but if we're being honest, the Jurassic Park franchise Spinosaurus just outclasses its native counterpart in every sense. And if you want a more in-depth explanation, I do have a video posted a while back. Anyways, we continue forth. The Hurrisaurus, though a bit smaller, would pose the same sort of threat that Carcharodontosaurus does. This is because it was a terrestrial hunter and it would likely come into conflict with ASIER 87. Now, since ASIER 87 could take down a full-grown Carcharodontosaurus and a full-grown Spinosaurus, I don't necessarily think that this theropod would be a bit of an issue when it comes to direct conflict. I think its adaptation to the new Spinosaur's presence would be to scavenge off its kills. If they began to move in larger numbers, then they might be able to force the Spinosaur off its prey, however that could be a bit of a reach. When it comes to seasonal shifts that occur within North Africa, other predators like the native Spinosaurus would likely struggle quite immensely. However, ASIER 87's adaptability would mean that it could transition between aquatic and terrestrial environments easily. This would allow it to exploit stranded prey and weaken competitors. I mean, we have seen it perform just fine in a desert environment, so even the most dramatic reductions of water would be of little issue. However, the bigger issue of changing environments would be the fact that the concentration of competitors and prey items would increase. This would result in the frequency of confrontations also increasing. However, I'm still on the side that if it was just a single native Carcharodontosaurus or a single native Spinosaurus, our Jurassic Park franchise Spino would just come out on top. After several years of living in this ecosystem, ASIER 87 would firmly establish itself as not only a, but the dominant apex predator in Late Cretaceous North Africa. Its adaptability, size, power, intelligence, and everything else would allow it to thrive despite the intense competition and challenges posed by the ecosystem. If we assume that it would be able to procreate with a female Spinosaurus within its territory, then that would be interesting. Some of its offspring would be able to reach adulthood. However, many more wouldn't, as many of them would be consistently picked off by predators depending on their size. When younger, Rugops or Deltrodromaeus could take them on, when older, Carcharodontosaurus or native rival Spinosaurus could come in. So although I do think some would reach adulthood, not all of them would. And those that do reach adulthood would be somewhat between ASIER 87 and the native Spinosaurus's capabilities, not being as strong but still being more than impressive. There is also the chance that as time passed and the Spinosaurus continued to exert pressure on the ecosystem, it would likely lead to the formation of larger packs of predators such as Carcharodontosaurus brachiodontosauruses if they weren't already hunting in groups. Despite the Spinosaurus being a hulk and a half, it could only endure so much damage. Its hyper-aggressive behavior towards other large theropods could ultimately spell its downfall. If a predator were to take it down, it would not happen in a single encounter. Instead, a string of prolonged conflicts would gradually weaken the Spinosaurus, leaving it vulnerable to injuries that would either lead to its own fatality or eventually lead to a defeat in battle. It might be impressive, but it's certainly far from immortal. Overall though, ASIER 87, also known as SNOC, generally known as the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, would be successful in surviving within North Africa during the Late Cretaceous period. It would finalise with an ultimate survivor score of 8.5 out of 10. And now we've reached the end of the video and I hope you've all enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I don't go extinct. I will catch you all in the next video. See ya.